Okay, it looks like I am live. So it's just gotten cloudy here. It was a beautiful day. Otherwise, not much else going on weather-wise. Love this top, but I'm not sure it looks great on me, but we'll just leave that there. So I have a list of things to chat about, and I don't know about you, but I just freaking hate holiday weeks because you lose a whole day. You think you're going to get the same amount done, and yet you lost a day and you won't. But I'm having a hard time meeting what I want to get done and what I can get done. And it's become clear to me that those two things are like on entirely different levels. And of course, I've operated on this crazy system for years, but it's getting a little harder to keep the balls in the air. So I'm having to make adjustments. I got my hair dyed. It seemed really dull, so I put some oil on it today. Not sure I got a great hairdo out of that. But I thought I would start with this. This is some socks I ordered from this company called Scano Socks. They're in Virginia, Southern Virginia, but they're cotton socks. They come in this cute little paper wrapper inside, of course, your mailing package. So it's ZKANO. These are made from organic cotton. Oh, they're made in Fort Payne, Alabama. And I learned about these when I was listening to a book, which I cannot remember the name of, about I don't want to say problems, but why it's not easy to manufacture clothing in the U.S. So this is a second generation company, and they started out just making like crew socks, and these are little balloons. I buy my socks completely by color, so I don't care really what the pattern is. I will say these are $20 a pair. They have two things that really are important to me. I have, what do they call it? Crab toes. Anyhow, my toes are all deformed, and so I can't have a seam here across my toe or it's just immediate blisters. So these have the smooth connection, which I really like. They are organic cotton, which I also like. They're made in the U.S., family business, all these things that I love. I wish they made wool socks because I don't have that much time that I wear cotton socks of this weight. So I'll wear them until it gets too hot, and then I'll pick them back up again when it starts to cool down a little in the fall. But if you're looking for organic cotton socks, so I was talking about the company. So the husband and wife made crew socks, and I can't remember exactly where this was in the progression that the daughter came in, but she's more artistic, where they were just making socks because that was what they knew how to do. So she comes up with these great designs, and then she has a production manager who, I'm going to take this one off, figures out how to produce the designs on their knitting machines. So anyhow, all the things I love, and they're really great socks. They're, like I said, a little heavy, and what I really want them to do is to do something with like Smart Socks or Darn Tough socks so that they could produce wool socks but have her designs. Anyhow, that's on my agenda. I may send her an email. So I had this on my Substack post today, and let's see, can we get in close enough that you can see? So this is a cable, but it's just one stitch over 4 stitches, and you do it 3 times, so it looks more complicated than it is. I've got a swatch over there that's lighter color, but I don't want to take it down. And this yarn is called Mystic from Oink Pigments, and I can't remember. Mystic, what's the name of it? Smarty Pants. Love the name. It's 100% merino, and it's just delicious to knit. So I am swatching patterns to suggest to anyone participating. I've got this swatch right here. Okay, so this is it blocked, and right side up, yeah. So that's what it looks like. It's really fun to knit. Once you get it, you don't have to look at the instructions. So this is one of the swatches I'm suggesting for the knitted tank, but this one I'm going to recommend that it be done in a panel because it's going to be a nightmare to do shaping in. So what I did on this one was I just did the setup for like 16 rows, and it looks kind of ribby and fluted. So I'm going to have that at the bottom and then go into a panel of this. So the other thing I've been doing, I want to make sure I get this right side up, stitch patterns for Knit Camp. And so this one is called Catena. It's a 6-stitch pattern, really easy to do. This one is somewhat more problematic because you have to shift a marker on one of the rows. This one I think is always really pretty. It's a 4-row lace repeat in between garter and stockinette. This is, I call it lace shield, don't ask me why, but for somebody who likes doing eyelets, that's a good one. Here's one I just call ladder. You can see I screwed up. That sometimes happens when I'm knitting and didn't notice it until I'd already blocked it. This one's called seated rib. I think it's just a very pretty stitch. And this one is like a scroll pattern, or that's what I see. I think it's probably called a vine pattern, but that's not what I see. Again, I think I'm going to recommend this one in a panel just because I'm a little worried about the scalloping on the sides. So that was my chore a week or so ago. Get those all swatched up and make sure that they would work and write them out and chart them. So I guess I did chart them all this week, so maybe I got more done than I thought I did. And I'm super excited about camp because it's really allowing me to go places I love to go. So I have a list of unblocked gauge and gauge for each of these. Now, this is not the yarn I'm using, but one of the things that I'm often looking for is, hi Richard, how much things change from what your knitting looks like and your blocked knitting. So I figured out the percentage of change for all of these in both stitches and rows, and I'll probably do up a calculator for that. But it allows you to look at your knitting and say like, oh, I know it's going to spread out, so it's not going to look quite like this. And that's information I'm always interested in. So like the scroll eyelet, I got 19 and a half stitches to 4 inches, but it was 25 stitches before I blocked it. And whereas the seated rib was 27 and a half unblocked, and then went to 25. So it's all the same yarn. So it's the configuration of the stitches that makes the big difference. I'm fascinated by this. You may or may not be. The article that I mentioned in my newsletter about how they're using knitting to explain something. I read both of the articles, don't really understand it, but they did confirm something that I've always said, that the true difference between knits and purls is how it pulls the yarn. So a purl pulls the yarn to the back and knit pulls it to the front. Anyhow, I have to reread that article and make some notes, but that was something that really became clear to me when I made paper stitches to show the relationship between knits and purls for a workshop that I did for Craftsy, which was the most poorly named. You would have thought that I named it. It was so badly named. And they ended up giving me back the rights to it because so few people signed up. Anyhow, that was perfect solution for me. And then a knitting editor said, oh, I would have called it this, and you would have sold 1 million of them. But that's life. So the other swatch I'm working on, this yarn that I got from a yarn company in Southern California called Present Tense Fiber. And so this is, rather than trying to remember, I'll read it to you. It's 80% merino, 20% Surrey and Wakaya alpaca. It's worsted. I would say it's really more DK, but that's just me. Because of the weight, it's worsted, but I think that's the heaviness of the alpaca. So I haven't measured my gauge, but this is a closed cable, and this will be a piece that goes around the neck like that. So there's a little bit of short rows to create some curve. And it's got this rolled trim to finish the top. Here's what I had to take out because I did my short rows backwards, had it turning the wrong way. But that's very common for me. And on both of these swatches, the blue and this one, when I had to rip them out, I just thought, oh, good, I get more knitting time with that yarn. So present tense fiber, and she uses yarn or fibers that are raised in her area of Southern California. And I want to say it's around Ventura, but I'm not. I often just make things up. Oh, no, it says grown in Ventura County. Okay, and then it was processed by Mountain Meadow Wool. It is gorgeous, 3-ply, which is why the cable looks so good. And let's see, what else do I have for show and tell here? So last weekend, as you know, I'm doing my knitting camp, and so we're having crafts on Fridays. And so I took these buttons that are all kind of nothing special, just things that a lot of these are from, you know, when they give you extra buttons when you buy clothes. And then I had some wooden beads. And these buttons are from Lick and Flames. I forget people's names. And I did this on I-cord. So I just stitched into the I-cord, but I'm having a little trouble figuring out how to get these to sit properly. So I have to work on that again this weekend. But this was like really tons of fun. I stitched it on with elastic because I wanted something that would be relatively strong. And so I think I might go in and put some, you know, I love a French knot and a bullion. And then I made little lengths of I-cord to tie some decorative buttons. And so the first installment of crafting will be what I call emergency finishes. So things that you can make. I got the idea when I was in design school, or actually in trade school, and we had to like make buttons and do some finishes as if we had no access to a store, which back in the 80s was true. Like if things weren't always open, so you know there was no internet shopping, so you could end up without access to anything. So it was an assignment that we had to create all the finishes on our project without anything except what we had on hand. So we had covered buttons and covered snaps, and I can't remember all the things that were required for that class, but I have things that I still do, and many of them involve I-cord because you can do such cool things with it. And just even a little knot like that is pretty cool. And it's soothing to make I-cord, so if you're in a panic, it can be a really good thing to do. I've done it under those circumstances. So we will learn how to cover a button or a snap. We will cover a button, tie cord buttons. I'm going to show some knots that you can use to create bracelets or like trim on something. These things are mostly just fun to do, and I love doing fun finishes at the end. So I have lots of ideas. Let's see, I've covered almost everything on my list. We're getting on, 2/4, so people are starting to walk by, which always distracts me. Oh, one of the things that we will practice some stitching. And so years ago, like maybe I lived in Portland, so it was in the 90s, and made 2 pillows that were these particular pillows. I did others. Pillow covers that were in Knitter's magazine, and I cross-stitched on them. And it was actually super fun. The unfun part of it was that to cross-stitch you need a grid. And so I had to make the fabric out of linen stitch, which is just a bitch. And I don't like that kind of knitting. It seems really fussy. So I made these 2 like 14-inch pillowcases. And so one was a cross stitch of knit with a ball yarn, and the other one said pearl. They're quite cute. And so we're going to practice some stitches on fabric, but also on some knitting or some knitted fabric, because it's a little different than doing it on woven fabric. I am not an accomplished stitcher. I can do stitches, but I'm not very good. But I want to be better, so I thought, well, maybe if I practiced, it would be good. So I've had this book for quite a while, The Geometry of Hand Sewing. It's from Alabama Shannon. And, so here, like, she just shows this is the same stitch, just done at different sizes. And they do a lot of stuff like this, and I'm quite honestly not patient enough to do that sort of thing. But you can, like, trim the edge of something, or you can put that on some plain knitting to just spark it up. So I frequently look through this book, and so here's a fabulous piece. I was going to say, I think that's trapunto stitching, but it's not. I started out as a sewer and loved doing things that were, so here's an interesting piece. So this is all the same stitch, just using different colors, and it's pretty uniformly overlapped, so it's all the color that's making it so interesting. And so they've got these, I can show you how these are plastic sheets. I'll get myself in front of it so you can like mark on your fabric. So these are all pretty close together, so more appropriate to woven fabric than to what we'll be doing. But I think I can create a little something that you can poke through on paper. So I will provide a template. And I love to create things. And I don't use Illustrator anymore. I use Designer on Affinity. And like today I did all kinds of things on that. And one of the other things that I will be offering a couple of days is showing how to do some simple things on, it's called a vector drawing program. So there are free ones out there. I don't know what they are. I use one called Designer by Affinity Serif, which I love and is pretty inexpensive, but they all operate on the same principle. It's all just figuring out how to use the tools. And Affinity is different than Illustrator, based on the same principles as Illustrator, but I have to say, because it was built more recently, it's actually not necessarily easier to use, but has some better ways to get some things done, and I know this much of it. I always only learn what I need to learn, so there's always room for improvement on that. Let's see, so I think I've covered just about everything. I wrote a blog post this week about time, and I was triggered. The idea was triggered. I was not triggered by a comment someone made that said they had planned to catch up over the weekend, but didn't. And I said, I don't think that catching up is actually possible. I think it's one of those fallacies we tell ourselves because we can't really accept the realities of time. Now, this may all just be projection, but I felt like we spend so much time chasing time and trying to manipulate time, by multitasking and all that sort of thing. And in reality, there are 168 hours in a week, and we sleep for generally 56 of those. So that gets you some number over 100 and something. Too late in the day for me to do that mental math. So I've been thinking about time. I'm always thinking about time because I never have enough. And I always have big plans that require time. And it takes me a long time to get things done because you can't bend time if tried. So in the blog post, it's on Substack, and everything I post on Substack is free for 6 weeks, and then it goes behind a paywall. You're welcome to, mark it. And if you ever need something that's behind the paywall, just ask me. I think you can search behind the paywall, and you get like some of it, and then it says you have to pay. And I just did that because I got sick of making free content, and I'm going to create the content anyhow, but it felt to me like other people were making good use of my content. So anyhow, back to Substack. You can get that. It was something about time. I can't remember what the title was. I'm always thinking about time because I can't fit everything in that I need to do. As I've gotten to be more of a senior citizen, it is less possible for me to multitask. And I'm not sure that multitasking is actually more efficient, but I think that it gives us the feeling of getting more done. So I've been focusing on, well, last month, or this month, up until the 28th of May. I gave myself some breathing room between the 28th and June 1. My goal was to not start new projects. And so what I observed, I'm always observing, was that I have these projects that are huge. I mean, like design camp is, a tank top, crafting. I have to create slides because it's done on Zoom. I have to have access to whatever things I need, so I have to put all of that together. And so became a little confused about what would be considered a new project. So if I start another sweater for my half-size dress form, is that a new project, or is it just an extension of something that already existed? So, knit design camp was not something I had actually started until after I got back from H&H, but it was on my list of projects that I was going to work on. So the one thing that I'm pretty sure was not on my list that I did anyhow was I one day decided that I had to have an events page on my website, and spent 4 or 5 hours down a rabbit hole creating that. And, that wasn't any place except that it was part of design camp because I decided I needed to have something. So anyhow, I got through May, and so my next experiment that was just not starting new projects. And the main impetus for that was that I was having a booth at H&H, and I needed to focus and not get distracted. So I really limited myself in order to get ready for that, because that was my number one thing. I was paying for a booth, so I had to make good use of it. And let's see. So then, first of all, a month was too long. I couldn't remember what started at the beginning of the month, what was going on. Anyhow, I realized that I had to have much stricter parameters and that I needed some flexibility. So my experiment for the next 2 weeks will be that tonight I'm going to make a list of the projects that I've got going on right now that I need to move ahead, and what all of the, I call them tentacles, are for each of those projects. And so I have a defined list of what I'm doing, and I can make a better assessment of, do I need to say I can't do that until, July, because I've already got myself committed. And I did that at H&H, and people were very nice when I said, well, I'll send you an email because I'm not starting any new work until June. But like I said, I'm not sure I actually didn't start new work. I can always find something new. So the one thing that is totally, this was not on any list, because this was yarn that was sent to me after H&H, and I believe it was on the 28th that it arrived, and I immediately put it onto needles that evening. I hand wound the ball. Oh, that was something I wanted to talk about. So I've been hand winding balls for yarn that is heavier than fingering. Fingering's just got too much yardage, and I end up getting it tangled, and it becomes a big problem. So that I have to use my Swift and ball winder. But I've been hand winding yarn because it allows me to spend quality time with the yarn before I have decided what I'm going to do with it. So when I was winding this ball, I first just noticed like what a pleasure it was to have this going through my hands. And it's got a really lovely little sheen to it, and it's very smooth and soft. And I would say that you could describe it as being silky. And Barbara did say that the merino that they raise in Ventura is not like high quality Rambouillet type merino. So by mixing it with the alpaca, they get more of the softness. So when I was working it into the ball, I was thinking about what I would do with it because I have one skein. It's 190 yards, so I know that I'm going to be restricted. I have a design that uses this closed cable, which are surprisingly easy to do. They look like impossible. They're really easy. And lace pattern. So I decided that I would just do that. I pulled that up on my phone because I had a PDF of it, so I could get the stitch pattern and immediately started working on it. But I find that I get to commune with the yarn a little bit by having that time where I'm hand winding it. And everything seems so fleeting these days because we're, massively hurrying to get to the next thing. And so it just gives me some time. I like to do it on Friday nights because I'm drinking a martini. But one of my rules is that I try to hold off on winding things because then I want to knit. Then I can knit the yarn. I mean, I can't knit this while it is in this form. But this one I brought back from H&H from a company called Knit Antics. And this is mulberry silk. It's in my pink and green favorite combination. And I want to make it like a piece of neck jewelry. And I have beads that I want to put in it. But I wound this just because I couldn't help myself and I had to do it. So now I'm just like moving it around and I'm telling myself so we're going to New York in July. Maybe I'll take that with me. Although I don't think beads and jewelry make a lot of sense while I'm traveling. The beads are going to have to be put on separately because the holes are very small. I just buy beads that I like. I never think about whether they'll fit. So I'm currently unable to locate my beading thread, which means that I didn't put it away and it's drifting someplace here. But again, that's like something I don't get too concerned about because it keeps me from starting new projects. That's really about all I have. I really need to spend. So we getting ready for the music hour. Mitch has selected what he wants for dinner tonight, or he narrowed it down to 2 things, and I will make the final choice and prep that. And then at the end of the music hour, which is 90 minutes on Mondays and Fridays, I will make us a martini and we'll enjoy that start that before our dinner. And then usually we watch, and this changes depending upon what's available. But so I used to watch Project Runway or something of that ilk on Friday nights, but I haven't seen that in forever. And so one of the things that we watched during COVID was video series that Ewan McGregor and his friend Charlie will come to me. So they do these motorbike trips. And so the first one they did, I think, was called Long Way Round. And they went from London across Europe. And I think they could only go partway through. And then they flew to Alaska. And then from Alaska went to New York. And that may have been the first one that they did. And then they did one called Long Way Down. And they went from, I think, his family home to Johannesburg. So all through Africa. And, they often have to transit across places that are either not safe for the bikes or, wars, things like that. Then I think the first one we watched was called Long Way Up. And so they started at the tip of South America and rode up to Los Angeles, except that there was a part of Mexico that they couldn't take their bikes through, so they had to ferry from one spot to another with their bikes. And so now they're doing one. I think that's all of them that they've done. You know, Ewan McGregor is very charming, and Charlie is funny, and he's the real biker. And he's broken so many bones in his body. It's just horrifying when you see like his legs. His dad was a filmmaker. But they're really fun, and they go places I'm never going because, like, I'm never riding from the tip of South America up through Chile and Argentina and through South America. I mean, you just, the scenery is gorgeous. Perfect for knitting and drinking a martini. So the one we're watching right now is they went from, I think, London and went across. They took a boat. Oh, they landed in the Netherlands, and so then now they've gone up into Finland, and I think are going across to Norway, and I can't remember what the route is, but again, ferrying across bodies of water because there are places that there aren't roads or that it's not accommodating to their bikes. Oh, the one that they did from South America up, they used electric bikes and kind of hadn't really thought about the fact that wouldn't be electricity some places, so they got into some interesting situations. But again, they're charming and fun, and they do work with UNICEF, so they sometimes have some UNICEF thing. But on that trip they also used Rivian trucks, and this was before Rivian. These were just beta. And so it was an all electric, and it's pretty fun. So this one, they're riding like older BMWs, like from one's a BMW, one's something else, but they're like 50s, early 60s bikes. And there are accidents and things. Anyhow, I just love it. We also watch Conan O'Brien, his travel show, because he's in that. And those are the only two things I can think of that we consistently watch on Fridays. Sometimes we watch a movie. Mitch gets the Criterion channel, so we have lots of access to old movies. And I'm just finishing up a couple of small projects that were not inspired by Sophia Loren comedies that we watched, but the names are inspired by, I can't remember, there was 2 movies or just a long movie. Anyhow, she was quite funny, and it was very early in her career, so I use that. I'm always looking for fun ways to name my projects. So that's what those were. And I think that's it. It's 4:15, and I should go. You should go. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time.